Hello and welcome to the Career Instinct podcast with me, Matty Taylor. Join me as I learn how to navigate life and careers in the 21st century. Today, we talk to Alice Davis about her career working with animal charities. Alice talks about attending Animal Management College, volunteering and working for the RSPCA, as well as her current job working for the Dogs Trust Freedom Project. The Freedom Project helps people escaping domestic abuse by putting the dogs of owners who are fleeing into temporary accommodation until their owners can find new and safe homes. If you're interested in a career in charities, working with animals, or fighting domestic abuse, Alice's career is great inspiration. She also gives great advice for skills and experiences you should focus on getting. Enjoy. Firstly, tell us a bit about yourself. So, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I'm from Runcorn, kind of born and bred. I went to school and college, but I didn't do university. I went straight into kind of work after college.
Nice, cool. So obviously now you work for the Dogs Trust, and a lot of the work you've done in the past revolves around animals. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to know where your love of animals comes from.
Do you know what? It's something that's just been with me for years. I can't even remember when it started. Since I was quite young, I've always been involved with animals, not necessarily having pets. We have had a few pets. When I was very young, I volunteered at a horse stables, mucking out the horses, cleaning their hooves. Then as a kind of reward for my voluntary work, the woman that owned the stables let me have free riding lessons, which was very fun, especially as a young girl. I really enjoyed being on the horse and just trotting around. That was really fun. So I did that for a little bit. And then, from a very young age, just always kind of wanted to work with animals. And I was never a children person. So animals was my other direction.
So do you think the volunteering was important? Like, did that really help you, get used to working with animals and also help you discover what part of working with animals you liked and what parts you didn't?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more I was around them and worked with them, the more I realized this is exactly what I want to do. I loved it. And to me, it never felt like hard work because I enjoyed it, which I thought, well, if I can get paid to do this will be amazing. Voluntary work helped massively because I think any experience you can get in any field, especially kind of animals, really helps kind of in the future, which I suppose you're not really told at a very young age that, kind of you should do as much voluntary work as possible. And maybe when you're younger, that's not what you want to do, but it's really helpful in it. It does help a lot. And people can see you've worked with a different range of animals and you've been in the field and you've got a lot of experience. So yeah, it was really good. I mean, I started off kind of stable work, did that for a little bit. I then volunteered at Walton Gardens Children's Zoo, which is only a small little kind of petting zoo.
What kind of animals are there at the petting zoo?
Yeah, so there's kind of small animals like chickens, squirrels, birds. Then they have pigs, goats, they have rabbits.
Oh, nice.
And they have donkey as well. They have two donkeys now, but they had one when I was there.
That's so good. What are donkeys like?
Well, the donkey in the zoo is actually quite narky. I think donkeys are probably generally quite nice, but this one donkey only liked one of the rangers that worked there, and so no one could go in with the donkey in case it kicked them.
Was the volunteering something that your parents encouraged you to do, or was it something you did off your own back?
The stable horse volunteering, definitely parents helped massively with that. I think they knew that I loved animals and that was something I wanted to go into. And luckily, my parents were really good and kind of knew voluntary work would help me. Plus, because I did want to be as involved as possible, they knew that was something I would enjoy as well. A lot of the other volunteering opportunities came through kind of college or school. So the Duke of Edinburgh is something I did a few volunteering things through as well. So yeah, a lot of it came from kind of education as well, of just them giving me the kind of prompt to go out and find some. From there, I'd just try and get as much as I could out of it.
Definitely. So knowing that you wanted to pursue a career working with animals, what would you recommend people would study at school and at college?
It's really hard. I mean, at school, kind of my specific GCSEs that I took, psychology, which is absolutely nothing to do with animals. It's more humans, but I really, I really enjoyed psychology. I also took history and French, and I can't remember a word of French, and I don't really remember much history either. I'm not very good at that either.
Well, it's all in the past.
Yeah, that's it. But at college, I chose to go to an animal management college, so it's specified in animal management. I did an animal management course. It was a level 3 extended diploma, so you can go in at any level and work your way up. They have an on-the-site zoo, so a lot of colleges will take you out for the day to the zoo to do like a practical lesson, whereas we could just get suited and booted and just go down the hall to the zoo, which was amazing. Wow. They had otters, capybara.
Wait, what's a capybara?
It's a giant guinea pig, basically. It's just a massive guinea pig. Yeah.
Yes, that they have in like South America.
Yes, yeah.
So
and then
cute.
They have meerkats as well, which were very cute. They used to try and dig their way out all the time. We had to lay underneath the floor, like mesh flooring, to stop them from getting out. So that was a great opportunity for you to just do a lot of on-site learning. They also had like an invertebrate room, so they had kind of, snakes, spiders, which I hated.
Well, at least you learned you didn't want to work with kind of spiders or stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's kind of a really good way as well to figure out which kind of animals you want to work, because they have dogs as well. They have dogs in kennels that you can kind of help train, and they're a lot of the time they're kind of staff dogs that they bring in while the staff are at work, but it just gives you that opportunity to kind of figure out what you wanted to do. And surprisingly enough, even though I currently work with Dogs Trust and a lot of my jobs have been around domesticated animals, I actually went and wanted to work in the zoo line. So within that course, when I was there, you got to choose whether you wanted to kind of go down a domestic route in your second year or a zoo route. So I picked the zoo route mainly because I absolutely love elephants. They're my favorite animal, and I would love one day to be working with elephants. Yeah. That would be
wow. Wait, so why are they your favorite animal?
They're just so intelligent. There's so much more to them, and they're giant, they're black, and they survive in such hot conditions because they're just made so amazingly with their big ears. And I don't know, they just fascinate me. It's just, I think their memory is the most fascinating thing. They can remember people by names and stuff like that. It's mad. Yeah, they'll get the elephant, kind of you get their trunk to kind of touch the person on the palm of the hand. They say their name, and they do it to like 3 people, and then the people move around, and the person will be like, okay, go to, and then they'll say a name, and the elephant will just touch the right person with their trunk. And I don't know how long this takes to train.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I initially went down the kind of a zoo route, and I really enjoyed kind of training in that field. But for part of my voluntary stuff doing that course, I actually volunteered at an RSPCA branch close to me. So it's the Warrington and St Helens branch. When I was there, they were specifically just cruelty case, so they took in very kind of vulnerable animals that had been quite hurt or had just been kind of abused and then left, so that there was nobody to prosecute. So I worked within that, volunteering at first, and I loved it because I love the people that were there. They were great, and it was so much fun to kind of work with the dogs and try and get involved with the training. And I suppose that then led me more down a domestic route, because I loved doing that so much. And the whole reasoning to me getting a job was me just nagging the manager quite a bit.
Amazing.
I know, because I'd been there quite often. I was like, if there's any jobs, you have to let me know. I need to work here.
That's so good. I really admire that. You just need to put yourself out there where you want to be working, and then make the connections. Yeah,
definitely. And I would just say, don't stop. Even if they tell you there's no jobs, keep going, keep volunteering. Try and keep your foot in the door as much as you can, because something will come up eventually. And that's what happened for me. Luckily, I kept my foot in the door even after I'd finished my volunteer placement. I carried on just kind of coming back and doing it a few days here and there. And then the manager actually just started texting me saying, can you come in on this day to cover? We've got a staff member off sick. And then she started giving me a small wage for doing that, because she was requesting me to come in, which was very nice. And then in the end, she got me a job. Unfortunately, the first job I got there wasn't actually animal based. It was in the office, but I was in the environment. I didn't mind. I was like, I will work towards this. It's fine.
Yeah, that's such a good attitude though, because I think it does just come down to, you might not get the ideal job first time round, but so long as, like you say, you have the foot in the door, you can see the trajectory is going in the right direction. That's kind of the key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. So I kind of knew I was in the right environment. You know, I could still see all the dogs and the cats that were there because they just had dogs and cats in this centre. So I was still involved with them, and it was quite handy for me. I mean, it taught me a lot of administration skills. So being good on a computer and customer service wise, you know, learning to chat to the public and just become a public facing person helped me a lot. So I was the administrator there for a while, and then eventually, I think it was maybe a year and a half or 2 years in, a spot opened up for operations support, which was like a step up, which was great because I would have responsibility over the isolation unit. So our most poorly or infected, bless them, dogs and cats, they were my responsibility. You know, it was that step closer to being involved with the animals directly, which was brilliant, because as a volunteer, I was doing the kind of animal care assistance job of being out there, doing the walking, the training, the feeding, the cleaning, and I loved that part of it. So it was great to be able to get back out there and do those isolation units. And I also had the admin side in with that as well. So I was doing kind of 50-50. It's a very small branch and it is very busy. It does get very hard to work balance everything, especially there's a lot more dogs and cats than there are staff members, and there's a lot of them to walk, fed, and so it can be quite hard to kind of get it all done. So it's definitely not a walk in the park. It is very difficult and it can be very stressful. And I think as well with the cruelty case centre, it takes its toll on you seeing kind of that many animals that poorly abused, frightened. So it is an amazingly rewarding job, but it can be very hard. Make sure you've got that strength to get through.
Yeah, no, for sure. How do you cope psychologically with seeing all these kind of cruelty cases?
The way we kind of dealt with it in the branch was it was absolutely fine to get upset. You know, none of us judged each other because they were such kind of hard cases. And sometimes you can't save a dog and it's not your fault. You know, they've come to you in such a bad way. We'll do whatever I can. But sometimes the vet says that they're in such a bad way, you know, we have to let them go. And I think those days are the absolute hardest, when you have to put an animal to sleep and you've done everything you can to try and save them, and it's not the staff's fault, but they take it on as their own kind of responsibility. You know, you feel like you failed that animal even though it's not your fault, it's that person that's abused them or caused them harm. I think the person that's worked closely with them will go in and just be with them as well, and sometimes that helps, just being there and being able to say, like, you know, they had a familiar face when they were going, which was nice. So yeah, it can be super hard, but I think just talking about it with each other, having a cry is fine, and sometimes it feels better when you do. And just, you know, if you need it, take a time out. You know, you don't have to go straight back to work. And that's kind of the understanding we all had, which was really nice. And they're still an amazing branch and still do amazing work, and they need, you know, all the help they can get, because under the RSPCA, it's slightly different. So they have nationally run centres and then independent branches. So the nationally run centres are kind of funded by the national RSPCA. However, the independent branches have to do a lot of raising their own money to be able to stay afloat and to keep going.
Which is where you were at, sorry. You were in an independent run. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So they get an income from the RSPCA, you know, for being a cruelty case centre. They get money for the kennels because they are cruelty case based, but a lot of the money does come from them earning their own donations and getting grants from people, and, you know, people leaving money to them in their wills and stuff like that, and they, you know, they survive off that income. It's hard to, you know, realise that some of the branches really struggle to kind of make it on their own.
Definitely. No, that's really interesting. So can you take us through an average week?
I'd work 8:30 till I think it was 4:30, and then we'd come in again the next day 8:30 till 4:30. So we never had any overnight coverage. We had a CCTV system set up to make sure that the place was secure, and we'd give the dogs their meals as late as possible.
Yeah, I never even thought about you'd need like overnight security, but obviously that's the case because you have animals who are vulnerable and ill that you need to look after.
That's it. And a lot of the time, you know, the RSPCA have removed these animals from some people because they've been neglective. So you have sometimes angry people that want their dogs back and want to find out where their dogs are. So you need security for that purpose as well. which is great. And so, yeah, I would kind of come in at 8:30. We'd have a staff briefing, find out what gone on the day before if you weren't in. So, yeah, they'd just run us by, you know, if we got a new admission and the staff that weren't in knew what was kind of going on with the dog, you know, what medication they needed. If there was a vet visit, we would run through all the new medication and the forms and what's been reviewed and, you know, what kind of happened and stuff, and just updating everybody. So that would be for the first bit of the morning. Then so all the animal care assistants would go out and give the morning feeds to all the dogs. We shut the shutters at night to keep them in and keep them warm. So we open all the shutters so they can go out and have wheeze. And, you know, the ones that haven't already peed inside anyway. And, you know, have a little run round and stuff like that. Get the feeds ready, do any morning medications, especially for me in isolation. I had quite a few medications to give. And I know potentially a lot of baths for dog that had mange or ringworm. They have like special shampoos. Also, before even going in, I would be suited and booted in a massive kind of overall, shoe covers, gloves, the whole lot. So, yeah.
And I guess at this stage, it was really useful for you to have had a lot of hands-on prior experience and teaching in this area, because you must be very comfortable with knowing how to deal with vulnerable dogs and how to approach them and what all the ringworm and diseases and infections were.
Yes, I am really grateful that like my time there, and they were quite short staffed, but that meant, as well as you feel a bit run off your feet and you do feel like you're doing 7 things at once, but it gave me so many opportunities to learn so much different stuff. So for example, I would be involved in vet days quite heavily, so I learned a lot of the vet side of stuff, which was really interesting.
What's a vet day?
Yeah, so a vet day, the vet comes to visit our branch once a week. She sees any new dogs that need to be seen for admissions and, you know, give them any medication. Some dogs need neutering if they've been signed over and we can rehome the dog. All dogs, when they come to us, are still case dogs and owned by the owners. So we have to wait for them to go through a prosecution system, and usually an inspector will take that person to court and try and get a conclusion and try and get the dog signed over. That is the ultimate, I suppose, goal. So it's just kind of weird, like that middle place, just looking after the animals until a conclusion's made. And then if the dog is signed over to our care, that means we can then rehome it to a new home, which is good. And in terms of an abandonment as well, where there's no one to prosecute, we just wait an abandonment period, which I think, and it was a while ago since I've been doing this, but I think it was 28 days. When we get the animals, we just look after them until they're signed over, and then a lot of the time we would transfer them to another branch for rehoming. With our branch being a cruelty case, it was shut to the public because a lot of the dogs were very vulnerable and sensitive cases. That was kind of handy about me working in the office, is I learned a lot of the background work and I got to speak to inspectors and learn a little bit about that side of things. So I think me just working in that branch just gave me a whole kind of new insight on the RSPCA and what they do. And I know there's a lot of mixed comments about the RSPCA, but I would just say, before anyone judges them, walk a day in someone's shoes that works in the RSPCA and you will figure out how hard it is.
Do you have any animals that stand out for you that you can still remember or you got particularly close to?
I do. I've had a few. One of them was called Susie. She was a Saluki. So she's a very thin, kind of, if you know what a lurcher or a greyhound looks like, the kind of slimmer, fast running kind of sighthound dog. So she was gorgeous. We found her in a petrol station, wandering through the car park. She was just on her own, and she'd had socks tied to her feet so tight that unfortunately we did have to amputate one of her legs. It had gone through to the bone and it was really, really bad.
But wait, how do you find a dog just walking through a petrol station?
Yeah, the public called the contact centres. The contact centre takes all the calls, and then all we get at the branch is just a call after the inspector going, do you have space for this dog? It's got A, B and C wrong with it. Can I bring it to you today, tomorrow, whenever? And we just check to see if we've got space, and if we've got, you know, the room, then Brill will have it in. So yeah, we actually had CCTV of it in the petrol station, and even though she had all these kind of, she had mange and ringworm and all this kind of stuff, she still just wanted to lick you all over the face. And she was so friendly. And even after we'd amputated her leg, that did not stop her. She was a star. She would run around like a loon. We had a big paddock that she could run in. Nice. She loved it. she would just get so excited.
Oh, so what was the fate of Susie?
A really happy story. She went to another branch to be rehomed, and she found her forever home, and she's still there now. And then there is another one, and it's a bit more of a sad story, unfortunately, bless her. So she was a pit bull, and I'm not sure kind of what anyone listening knows about pit bulls and banned breeds, but there are, I think, I could be wrong, 5 or 4 banned breeds. The kind of one that we come across in this country a lot, though, is the pit bull. And unfortunately, in the Cruelty Case Centre, we did get a few pit bulls come in, because unfortunately, bad people like to train them to do bad things. And then usually bad people don't look after their dogs very well either. And they're usually trained for dog fighting and stuff like that, which is, of course, illegal. So she came to us, and she was very kind of poorly as well. She had a lot of skin issues, and she was one of my isolation dogs. It's so hard because I made her better, even though I knew potentially what the outcome would be. So because unfortunately it is illegal to own a pit bull in this country, and there is a destruction order put on them, which means that they will be put to sleep. As a dog owner, you can make your dog exempt. So unfortunately, because obviously none of us were her dog owner, we couldn't rehome her. It's illegal to rehome. She had to be put to sleep, and it was the saddest day of my life. Honestly, she was so loving and so sweet. It just frustrates me so much that there are any banned breeds, because no dog comes out wanting to rip everybody's throat off. That is through training of a person. So it is definitely how they are brought up and not the breed. Every pit bull I've met has been absolutely lovely. And so, that was quite a hard one for me. And we unfortunately had a few cases of that, which was very, very sad.
Yeah, definitely. Your job does sound like there's such an array of emotions that you have to deal with. It must be so rewarding when you're able to help animals. Does that make it all worth it? Would you still encourage people to do this work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. Like I was saying, it does take a strong person to be able to do that kind of job. Not all animal work is like that. I think it's just that specific branch and working in that specific environment. It can be very hard because of the type of dogs you get and cats you get in. But I would definitely encourage people to do it. It is super rewarding. I think not even just then getting them rehomed, but seeing a nervous dog terrified of everything trust you and be able to meet people and be fine with it, and just amazing. And it is so rewarding. And RSPCA, Dogs Trust, even Cats Protection, any charities that work with animals, it will be a very rewarding job, definitely.
Good. Well, no, it definitely sounds like it for sure. And it also sounds like there is a lot of psychology, not necessarily human psychology, but being able to get animals to trust you again. There must be some mind play going on there for sure.
Well, I suppose in terms of learning theory for dogs and dog training, it's very similar to a lot of the stuff you learn in human psychology with Pavlov and kind of things they teach you in psychology as a basic thing. A lot of that comes into dog training as well, which is mad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was a good choice you made. Just to summarize then, so growing up you were able to do a lot of volunteering, which gave you good hands-on experience, and then you were able to go to college, which focused specifically on getting your level 3 diploma in animal management, and then you were also able at the same time to do volunteering with the RSPCA, which meant you got both the kind of the hands-on experience but also the admin experience.
My previous jobs, they weren't animal related at all. My first job was actually my friend's dad owned a company and he needed a cleaner. So my first job was just cleaning toilets and offices. So that was my first job. And then my second job was just in retail, which gave me customer service skills, which is always really handy.
Yeah. But you know what? I think getting part-time jobs when you're a teenager is super important. I've done a lot of working in restaurants, but it builds your confidence and it builds your ability to talk to the general public and answer questions and knowing what good service is and this kind of stuff, which are foundational kind of career skills that you need to then be able to present yourself in an office or to the public. Or
the more jobs you have when you're kind of younger, the good practice for interviews for when you want, that Definitely. Big job that you really do want, that you've been working towards. It gives you that experience to be able to go into that interview and do everything you can. And I think that helped me massively in my interview for the job I've got now as well.
Yeah, okay, perfect segue. So tell us more, because obviously you no longer work at the RSPCA. So tell us the process and the timeline of how you ended up being at the RSPCA, but now working in your new job.
When I was at the RSPCA, it wasn't the highest wage in the world that I was on, and life was moving on for me. I wanted to look at potentially moving out, which I realized on the wage that I was on just wasn't doable
Yeah.
for me. And I wanted a kind of new car, and there was just new things I wanted in my life that I just needed a bit more money for. So I suppose
Yeah.
one of my main factors was financial.
People don't, but people shouldn't underestimate how it's not just the job, it's like the lifestyle and the finance and everything that you have to consider.
Yeah, I think I'd got to that point where it was like, right, I feel like I've got everything I could potentially get out of this job. It's given me a lot of skills, and I now kind of need more money, and I'm ready to move on. And as well, with me saying how tough it can be mentally on you, it can be a quite stressful day, and there can be a lot you've got to do. It just wore down on me. I was there for a good few years, and I mean, probably including the volunteering and the working, maybe 4 years there. I was just kind of ready to move on. And so I was just having a little look on Indeed, having a browse. I was reloading it every day. Nothing was coming up.
Yeah.
I just kept going and applied for a good few things as well that I never got through. And I would just say, I think another important thing to note is, don't get disheartened by the stuff you don't get. I would just
100%.
keep putting out for absolutely everything, because I think a lot of the time, you'll kind of put all your eggs in one basket and go, right, I'm just going to do this one job. And
Yeah,
then you kind of hang all your hopes on it. And sometimes
definitely.
either you're not right at that moment, or they found someone that's maybe got, you could be perfect, but unfortunately someone with 10 times more experience applied on that day, and so they've chosen them over you, and it's not your fault, but it's just to keep going and keep searching for jobs, because one will come through. And amazingly, that's what happened to me. I applied for the Dogs Trust Freedom Project, which I'd never heard of before, but as I was reading the job description, it sounded like something I already do, like I say, for a higher wage. Dogs Trust Freedom Project help people fleeing domestic abuse put their dogs into foster. So it's a temporary fostering system, and it then returns dogs to owners once they're safe and ready to have their dog back. The Freedom Project covers a lot of areas, so London, the North East, the North West, Yorkshire, East Anglia, and Scotland. I think the only area they don't cover currently is the Midlands. However, I would say if anyone is in the Midlands and does need the project, to just call the Northwest.
Yeah. So let's just talk through the process then. So say, for example, if someone was in a situation of domestic violence, and obviously that's a really traumatic time, and there's a lot of considerations that has to go through your mind of potentially being able to leave that situation. But is it the case that that person wanting to flee has a dog that can act as a bit of a hindrance to them actually making the decision to leave the perpetrator? And so what happens is the Dog Trust Freedom Project will step in to take that dog into temporary care so that it's no longer with the perpetrator and potentially in danger, but also to give the person who's fleeing the peace of mind that their dog is safe. And once they're rehoused, you will reunite them with their dog.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, a lot of the time, a lot of people will go to temporary accommodation, refuges. You'll have a domestic abuse key worker that will help you with all this, and you can call the domestic violence helpline to get that person and to get that help. If you don't know where to start, that is the best place. If you have a dog, yeah, Dogs Trust Freedom Project will be able to help you.
Yeah.
And yes, like you say, they go into refuges because they have to flee their home. Some people stay with friends and family, but again, if they've got dogs or they've got a very busy household, they're not always able to keep their dog there, or friends and family may care for the dog for a little bit and then it becomes too much. Sometimes it can take several months for people to be able to find new properties or to get back on their feet again and to be able to be in a safe position. Every case is different with domestic abuse, and every case is usually very complex, and there is a lot more to it, so it's never kind of straightforward, and we understand that, and we were willing to work with people and give them as much time as we physically can, having their dog in foster with foster carers who are all wonderful people. They are very, very kind people. We make sure they've got experience owning dogs, so your dog is really well looked after. They know what they're doing. They're heavily supported by us. We provide everything for the foster carer, so there's no financial outgoings for the foster carer or for the person fleeing. It's a completely free service for them. Dogs Trust cover the cost of vet bills and kind of food and etc. You know, anything like that. So foster carers, all we need from them is their home and their love.
Yeah. Aw. But it's so incredible, like hearing the work that the Freedom Project does just makes me realize how complex these cases of being able to flee domestic abuse is. And before I heard about the work you do, in my mind, I would never have even considered that needing to be able to house your dog is a key inhibitor of being able to flee.
Definitely. I never realized the Dogs Trust even did anything like this until I saw this job pop up, and I thought, you know, what an amazing thing. And then since I've been in the job and they've put me on a lot of training so I can understand more about domestic abuse, so then when I am helping people, you know, I understand what they're going through. And I wanted to help people because I realized how much of an issue it is. A lot of people, there's a bit of a stigma around, you know, where domestic abuse happens. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to very wealthy people. It can happen to very poor people. It can happen to male, female, anybody. And it's so sad how much of an issue it is. It needs to have awareness raised. Then more people are aware and they know what to look out for at the signs, because a lot of the time it takes your friends and family around you to be able to say, I don't think you're in a safe position, because sometimes it's hard to see it yourself. And then other times it's very well hidden and only that person will know what they're going through themselves. They do say as well, the most dangerous point of being in that relationship is actually once you've left. They're considered to be in more danger, so it's even more paramount that, you know, they are in the safe place, and, you know, everything is kept very confidential, and that's what we do on the Dogs Trust as well. You know, no information is ever shared to the foster carers about that person's situation. All they're doing is just caring for the dog and offering that kind of freedom for them to be able to flee, because it can be a barrier, and sometimes perpetrators will threaten to harm the dogs or will harm the dogs as a way to get through to the owners and try and control the owners. And it's not always, as well, I think this is a very important point to stress, it's not always physical. Coercive control is a very big issue. There doesn't have to be bruises and broken bones for it to be abuse.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's really great that you were able to get domestic abuse training going into this job, because you're working with quite vulnerable people, and it's definitely great that the Dogs Trust are able to ensure that its employees are well versed and able to deal sensitively with what are difficult and, as you say, complex situations.
I've learned a massive amount since being in this job as well. And I've not been in this job very long, probably about a year and a half.
Say if someone was in a situation and they recognized they wanted to flee, but they were concerned about what would happen to their dog, what tends to happen?
Our line is public to anyone, so anyone can call us. We get calls from loads of different people. So sometimes we're in touch with the police. A lot of the time it's key workers helping that person flee. Sometimes the key workers will just try and get the help for them, because it's a lot, they're going through a lot, they've got a lot to deal with. And like, so the times it is the person themselves, and sometimes it is the friends and family. When they do call up to give us the best idea of the dog and what kind of foster home it needs, we get them to fill in a dog information form, which is quite a detailed form, but it gives us a really good idea of what the dog is used to doing in the home, and, you know, whether they like other dogs, and are they likely to get on with cats, will they chase cats, you know, just kind of all their bits and bobs, so we can find the best foster home. And as well, if they're scared of men, then we would place them in a female only home, you know, that kind of stuff as well is really important. So we have a range of foster homes, and we can never have enough foster carers. We need different people with different abilities in different areas, some with experience of large breeds, small breeds, medium breeds, people that don't mind the dog going on their couch.
Do you find the dogs tend to be quite shy?
You know, it's such a 50-50. I think it depends what they've been through, and you know, if they actually have been abused during being at home, and then others haven't been involved but they've heard a lot of stuff, and so that can make them a little bit more nervous. But I think, you know, a lot of them do deal really well and they do settle in really quickly. And I think dogs are so great because they just want to love anyone that will love them, you know. As soon as you offer your arm to them, they just want to be your friend. And then others do take a bit longer, but by about a week on the project, they're best friends with the foster carer. And a lot of the time they're really resilient, and they do cope really well with the move. So we make sure that the dog is placed at least kind of 45 minutes to an hour away from where the person has fled from. So I take them on the journey and then drop them off with some strangers again.
Yeah, it must be quite destabilizing for the dogs then. So it definitely is like great that you go through such dog due diligence, if you like. So how many calls do you tend to get a week? Is there like an average, or?
Our rates of calls change all the time. Sometimes we can have a really busy day and get loads in on one day. Other times we can have really quiet days. It can go from being quite quiet to then when someone does call, you know, if it's an emergency situation and they need help imminently, you drop as much stuff as you can to be able to go and help them as quickly as possible. So it can change very quickly. Not a lot of the process is planned out. You know, a lot of it is last minute, and, you know, they've just decided, right, this is my time, I need to leave now, or I've got a refuge space, I have to go now. And they've not realized that Dogs Trust are there and they can help put their dog into foster, and they only realize that when, you know, they're at the refuge and the refuge won't let them take the dog in.
Can you tell us a bit more about the specific work that you do and what, for example, an average work week would look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, which is very nice, not to have to work weekends.
Yeah, and a bit of a later start than your previous job.
Exactly, yeah, a bit of a lion. We do have an emergency phone number that goes round on a rota between all the staff, and that is for anyone with a dog. If they have any vet emergencies, you know, our foster carers have that number. And luckily, I've not been on the emergency phone too many times, but so far so good. I've not had any calls. Everything's changed now because we're all working from home with COVID and everything that's going on. It's quite nice for me because it means I've got no commute to work, so I can just kind of get up 5 minutes before I start and sit down and go. So yeah, I'll get up and kind of check through my admin stuff. So check my email, see if there's any referrals come in or anything from any of my colleagues and my managers that needs dealing with. And then I will work through my day's job. So they vary kind of day to day. Sometimes I'll be interviewing foster carers. Other days I'll be taking referrals. Other days it could be a lot of my days consumed with just doing volunteer inquiries. My week is very different every week. So sometimes I can be doing returns to owners, which is lovely to be able to return a dog to the owners. The dogs are usually so excited. So that's a lovely part of the job. Sometimes I can be doing collections, so going out. So I travel all across the Northwest. We cover Manchester, Cumbria, Lancashire, Merseyside, and Cheshire. Like I say, sometimes we do out of area referrals. So sometimes I get referral from North Wales. And then, you know, like I say, with the Midlands, if people can meet halfway, it's really helpful because then we can usually help. A lot of it kind of is driving around on the road, but I don't mind that at all, to be honest. I just have a, you know, turn the radio on, have a little sing song. And so yeah, and then a lot of it is paperwork based, with getting a lot of stuff filled in, making sure everything is logged. Every phone call you take, you know, you log down everything, just updating all our databases and spreadsheets really.
Okay, nice. So what would you say are the best / most rewarding bits about your job, and what are the more difficult aspects of your job?
Yeah, I mean, the most rewarding part is definitely being able to return a dog to an owner, just knowing that kind of, you know, how much you've helped that person. I think it's so nice for the foster carer as well to know how much you've helped that person and seeing the joy in reuniting them. And, you know, a lot of people care more about their dogs than they do themselves. You know, they want to make sure their dogs are okay. And it's so nice to see them back together again. So that is definitely the best part of the job. The more difficult parts is probably the emotional side to what the people have gone through and trying to, you know, be as understanding as possible. Some people go into more detail than others about what they've been through, and that can be quite hard to hear. And I think as well, if the animal has suffered any kind of abuse, you know, that's really hard to hear and hard to take in, but it's good to know that, you know, you're going to be able to help that dog and that person. even though it's kind of one of the harder sides is hearing what's gone on and just the reality of what's actually happened. I suppose the nice part is actually knowing you can do something to stop that happening again, which is good.
Yeah, for sure. And then ultimately, like you say, reunite the owners with their dogs.
Yes, which is the best.
Yeah. How long do dogs tend to be in foster care for, or does it really matter on a case by case basis?
Yeah, so we offer 6 months fostering on the project. Some people are done really quickly and they can have their dog back within the first kind of month or 2 months. Others
Wow.
take the full 6. And then some may take a little longer and need some extensions, especially at the moment with coronavirus. A lot of people are struggling to find housing given the circumstances. And so at the moment, we're extending a lot of placements. It isn't something we're able to do for years. We do have to put a limit on it because the dog gets very attached to the foster carers. The foster carers get very attached to the dog, and it becomes very hard for them to part. It's hard enough letting them go kind of at the 6 to 9 month mark. So yeah, it's hard to say. Some are very quick and some are a lot longer.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And you also mentioned COVID, which I think is probably really an important thing to talk about at the moment. Firstly, I guess from the funding point of view, but secondly, also, I think everyone is aware that obviously lockdown has led to a significant spike in domestic abuse cases. One fact I was reading was that during the first UK national lockdown, the police recorded a rise of 7% in cases of domestic abuse in comparison to the same period in the year before. How has that impacted the work that you guys are doing?
When lockdown first started at the beginning, kind of March time, and we had lots of offers of help for fostering because everyone was at home. We were very quiet on the referral front, especially in the Northwest. I'm not sure about the other regions. I think that's purely because lockdown forced a lot of people to be stuck indoors with their perpetrator. You know, any relief that they were getting previously, they were no longer having because no one was allowed out, you know, unless you were going to the shops. And even then, the perpetrator may go with you, not wanting to leave you any time on your own. And it just gave perpetrators that extra chance to control somebody. That poses the threat of not being able to get help or call anybody or talk to anybody else because you're stuck in that one environment being constantly watched and heard. So we were very quiet when we knew cases were rising, which was awful. And then I think as soon as the restrictions eased and people were able to go out, when people were able to go back to work, that gave them the space to be able to ask for help, talk to friends, colleagues, you know, about what's been going on and try and get that support. And then we started getting very busy. Luckily, at the moment, we are still getting a fair amount of calls come through, which is really good that people are still using us. What I think was amazing is recently you are allowed to flee domestic abuse, and that is considered an essential journey if you get stopped. Yeah, exactly. I know, because it was never said in the first one, I don't think. I never read it anywhere. Just to let people know as well, the Freedom Project has run from beginning to end. We have always been and always will be there for people. Don't ever feel like, you know, I'm worried they might be shut or they're not working. Just call and we'll be able to help because we're still running.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Have you personally experienced any particularly dangerous or tense situations?
I've been really fortunate in not being put in any kind of risky situation, which has been good. We do have a lot of security plans in place. So we have like an SOS lanyard. So when we go out anywhere to people we've never met before, even if it's just a home visit to a foster carer, just to make sure we're as safe as possible, we turn on our device and it locates our GPS. If we're ever in danger, I just have to hold the SOS button down for 4 seconds. Someone will come through and ask me if I'm okay. And if they don't have a response or if there's something they hear that's concerning, it contacts the police straight away.
Oh, wow.
And then the police are told my location and come to where we are, which is really good. And especially with a large amount of us being females, the majority of our clients are female. And so we just felt like a female voice at the end of the phone, especially after what they're fleeing, is very helpful. So yeah, with a large amount of us being females, it's probably very important that we have the SOS device there as well. We also have a buddy system. So if there's not 2 of you going out, I always have to let somebody in any of the teams know where I am when I go in, and then I let them know when I come out. And if they don't hear from me, again, they put in the motions to make sure someone goes and sees if I'm okay. So again, that helps keep us safe. We don't go into the property a person's fled from either to ensure that we don't come across the perpetrator. So we meet in a safe area very close. So, kind of a supermarket close or a park close, somewhere that they can get to easily enough. Not only the perpetrator is a worry, but potentially the perpetrator's friends or people they know, and sometimes they do have large amount of crowds that will be looking out for certain things in areas. So we like to try and make sure we can meet somewhere safe enough away that they can get to meet us with the dog, and vice versa. We'll return to the property if it's safe, but if it's anywhere near where they've fled from, or if they go back to the property they've fled from because it's been made safe, we still would meet in an area away from that property just in case. So luckily I've never had any incidences which have involved a perpetrator, which is very, very good. And I'm sure there's probably been the odd incident somewhere in one of the regions. I think the Freedom Project's been going for 15 years.
Wow.
Coming on to 16 soon. So yeah, I'm sure someone's got a story somewhere to tell.
You guys really know what you're doing, and it sounds like a super well thought through, safe and secure operation you guys have got running.
Yeah, they've done really well, and we're constantly updating stuff as well, especially during the pandemic of trying to keep other people safe just due to coronavirus.
That's so great. For someone who wants to follow in your footpaths, go work in charity work, specifically with animals, do you have any advice that you would give them, and say maybe any key skills that you have really valued having or learning along the way?
One thing I suppose for me is I always stressed about kind of trying to get to uni because everybody else was as well. And I think there's a lot of pressure on going to uni and doing as much education as possible. But if you're like me, and I was never very good under pressure in exams, I was worried I was never going to get a good enough job without having degrees in different stuff. And so I suppose just to anyone that's feeling the same as that, don't worry. I suppose just do what you can. College definitely important. And the reason I did a diploma as well is because it's not kind of like taking A-levels. It's different. It's a lot of coursework and practical work. So I suppose if you're like me and you feel like that, then don't worry, take a diploma course, animal management course, get as much volunteering experience as you can. It always looks really good that you've offered your time and you're in that field that you want to go in, and it gives you such good experience as well. If you wanted to get into the domestic abuse field, do a lot of research into it, have a look at the different kind of key worker jobs. I'm not sure what your voluntary options are, but I mean, Dogs Trust Freedom Project is a great opportunity as well. So always keeping an eye out for any jobs, because we hopefully are expanding. So yeah, I'd keep an eye out for any jobs within the Dogs Trust Freedom Project too, because it is a really good job. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a weird one because I really want you to get bigger, because obviously I want you to help people, but then I want you to like not have to need to be in existence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, that's it. It is like a double-edged sword, isn't it? You kind of, I love this job, but I also don't want to have it, because there shouldn't be a need for me, because it shouldn't be such an issue, but unfortunately it is. So I'm glad, like you say, I'm glad we're able to help.
I think the work you do is super important, and I really wish that more people knew about it. So I hope that we can spread awareness by sharing this episode. Just to echo what you've been saying, like if anyone needs support, they can just go to the Dog Trust website to find out more information, right?
Yeah, Dogs Trust website, the domestic violence helpline, Women's Aid. There's so much stuff out there. You've probably got local agencies in your areas as well that will specialise in it. So just even Googling domestic abuse help or domestic violence help in my area and just seeing what comes up, because even if they're not specifically able to help you, they'll know the right people who can. So ring anyone and they'll be able to redirect you to the right people.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed hearing all about your different career experiences. You've offered some really great pieces of advice. So thank you so much. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. No, you're welcome. I've really enjoyed chatting about it too. So thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Career Instinct podcast. If you're keen to hear more from us, then click subscribe and stay up to date with all our latest episodes and guests. To get in touch, you'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the handle The Career Instinct Podcast. Until next time, everybody.